if he has any, and let's get on with it. The American people deserve to have this thing wrapped up and over with.
The woman from Alabama who left to join ISIS and marry an Islamic State fighter will not be getting her wish to return to the United States.
The attorney representing the Covington Catholic student says Nicholas Sandman's image is tarnished.
The way the media portrayed him as literally the face of evil, because he was white, he's Catholic, and he was wearing a Make America Great Again cap.
Samsung, they have been teasing this foldable phone for a while, and we are finally lured a price tag. Get this, $1,980. Let's get right to a Fox News alert. The Empire actor Jussie Smollett is now in police custody.
This just happened. The actor is under arrest hours after Chicago police named him an official suspect in the alleged hate crime against him, himself. He's charged with making false statements to police, which could result in prison time.
All right, let's go out to Chicago right now, where Matt Finn is waiting with a thorough report. Matt, we understand that apparently there's going to be a press conference at 10 o'clock Eastern time, and then he, Mr. Smollett, will be at a bond hearing at 1:30, right?
Yep, and that's correct. Chicago police confirming that right now Jussie Smollett is in the custody of Chicago police detectives, and Chicago police say their detectives testified yesterday before a grand jury to get these charges approved, as did the Osundario brothers. They testified for 2.5 hours yesterday before the grand jury, and new surveillance video shows the Osundario brothers apparently buying the supplies to carry out this attack, black masks and red hats, with which Jussie Smollett allegedly told them to purchase. Now, the attorney for the Osundario brothers says the brothers did get some type of money from Smollett, but, quote, not in the narrative that's out there. The attorney says the brothers do not have a plea deal or immunity. They were cooperating because they wanted to reveal their truth. The brothers' attorney also praises Chicago police.
When I say that the police spent countless man-hours trying to piece this together, I mean that. I absolutely mean that. When I say that my clients spent countless hours getting their story out there to the police so that they could do their work, I mean that too.
Smollett's attorney released a statement reading, quote, "Like any other citizen, Mr. Smollett enjoys the presumption of innocence, particularly when there has been an investigation like this one where information, both true and false, has been repeatedly leaked. Given these circumstances, we intend to conduct a thorough investigation to mount an aggressive defense." Right now, the attorney for the Osundario brothers says she does not expect her clients to be charged. Brian, Ainsley, Steve.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. So what we understand, TMC's got a report this morning that talks a little bit about what the brothers did tell the grand jury. And keep in mind that the grand jury handed out the indictment, and that's why he was arrested this morning. Apparently, the two brothers said they staged the hate attack. Jussie orchestrated it. They did get paid for it, didn't specify in the news article how much. They drove with him to scout the location. They rehearsed the attack, and as he said during that report, they were seen on camera buying ski masks and red hats and bandanas, and Jussie told the brothers exactly what to buy.
Well, we
there
had
it is right there.
Judge Napolitano on earlier, and he said what Jussie Smollett really needs to worry about are the federal charges against him, because he originally allegedly sent himself that letter
Through the federal
mail, and that is a hefty crime, he said, or that is a hefty sentence, up to 20 years, I think he said. But the felony charge, which was the local police's charge, up to 3 years in prison, 1 to 3 years.
Right. I mean, or he could get probation, depending on how this whole thing shakes out. I know in there was powder. They had to call a hazmat team. It ended up being crushed aspirin. You could have upwards of $25,000 in fines, 1 to 3 years. But the question is, what was behind it? Why did he actually think he could pull this off? And if you're Good Morning America and he calls and reaches out because he wants to tell his story, do you feel almost victimized? Because he's sitting there putting on his best acting face, allegedly, talking about how he was hit, and he just wants everyone to know how he fought back. That was the only thing he wanted to know. And he just bragged about the fact that everybody knows I'm in very anti-Trump. And there is some pictures of him with Kamala Harris and so many others like Cory Booker have weighed in immediately condemning the climate in this country.
Well,
Judge Napolitano was with us and told us where this could be going.
cost the city and Cook County a fortune in resources and money. I am going to guess he did not tell his own lawyers the truth. If he told his own lawyers the truth, there was a time, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 days ago, they could have gone to the prosecutors and worked out a deal. Now it is too late.
There also is a story that at the 11th hour, just before the two brothers were going to testify in front of the grand jury, apparently Smollett's attorneys called the prosecutors and said, hey, we've got exculpatory evidence that could change the whole story. We don't know what that was, but obviously it did not because he has been indicted. The judge was just talking about the resources involved. Mark Furman said last night on our channel that something like 24 different detectives were involved in this case. And here's a soundbite from a guy in Chicago, the executive director of Violence Interrupters, and he said those assets, those resources were taken away from other really important crimes.
I was born and raised in Chicago, and I know violence quite well here in Chicago, so I was one of the first community leaders that put this out on one of my LinkedIn posts. I wrote a post about it because nobody really, if you get beat up for real in Chicago, nobody gets pimp slapped in Chicago, nobody gets a pass, in other words. Making a comment about Chicago being Make America Great Again country, that does not happen in Chicago. He's receiving all the attention, and we just had a 1-year-old child, a toddler, shot in the head named Baby Chase, and he's not getting any attention. And we have a 14 to 16% homicide clearance rate. And if Jesse is guilty of the charges, he's dead wrong because he's taking much-needed attention from a serious problem in Chicago.
Absolutely. I wonder who makes the decision to put that much time and effort and resources into a celebrity accusation when there's so many other murders in, I guess, less affluent
not only
areas.
taking attention away from the people who really need the attention and fighting the real crime that's there, if this is a made-up story, then I think he should pay the city back. He should be made to pay the city back because it was very expensive for them to do all these investigations. 24 different detectives?
Well, you know what? He's a high-profile guy. Empire is a big show on a big network, filmed in Chicago, and he's a star.
Think about how this could have blown up. Like you mentioned, it could have caused riots.
No kidding.
Well, had it not, but it was determined that it was not a true story because there were some red flags out there.
Right.
But when you saw him on GMA 1 week ago today, he made the case with all of his heart that he was the victim of a hate crime. Watch this.
He said, this MAGA country punches me right in the face. So I punched it back. I noticed the rope around my neck and I started screaming.
Why did you hesitate to call the police?
There's a level of pride there. As a gay man, you were considered somehow to be weak, and I'm not weak.
Have the noose around his neck?
What would a psychiatrist say about this? Why would anyone do this? Why would they go to this extreme?
Right. And was there anybody else involved? They're looking into whether an accomplice.
He has a wonderful career. This is not like a guy who needed the attention. He was a famous actor.
Right, but one of the initial stories was he was going to be written out of Empire. Then Fox came back and said, look, he's going to be with us. We love him. One of the red flags they were talking about regarding the news, 42 minutes. It's like that was one of the first things. When cops arrived to talk to him, he was still wearing the noose. I mean, if somebody put a noose around your neck, wouldn't you take it off pretty much immediately? Right. The other one was he took the cops to the location and he said, well, it happened right here, and luckily there's a surveillance camera right there. The cops all thought that's weird that he would see that, and they go, you know what, that's pointing the other way. The brothers did tell, apparently, the grand jury that they rehearsed it, so was that spot selected because it was under that camera? And at that point, he didn't know it was pointing the other way.
Right, maybe he was the one who twisted the other way while he staged the whole thing. Who knows? Meanwhile, 9 minutes after the hour, I don't know if you heard, but the Democrats weren't too thrilled with the president's announcements last Thursday, declaring a state of emergency so he can continue building the wall and repurposing some money.
They didn't like that?
Up to $8. Yeah, it turns out, I have sources. It goes up to $8 billion. Today, to the credit of four House Democrats, they're going down to the border themselves. My hope is this isn't staged. They get to see how bad situations are and what the resources actually needed down there. And there are the four Dems that are going down. Of course, Benny Thompson is chairman of Homeland Security. So my hope is that he goes there with an open mind and open ears and listens to Border Patrol.
People have been calling on Nancy Pelosi to go down there to the border. So good for those Democrats for going down there, talking to the border agents. Maybe they'll find out, what they really need. Many of them are saying they really do need that wall. Joaquin Castro, he introduced this legislation that is will will go before the House tomorrow. And then Nancy Pelosi sent letters to every single person in the House, Democrats and Republicans, saying, please, if you want to sign on to this legislation, please do so.
Remember, it was just a week or two ago when they were going to have the big vote. They said, the Democrats said, we got to hear from the experts. They heard from the experts. They all said, we need a wall. And then they voted against the wall.
If they vote against the emergency declaration, then it still goes to the president's desk and he could veto it. And
for the resolution. But
Correct.
the big question is, what would the Senate do? And the Senate probably would not pass it. So stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Meanwhile, 7-Eleven here in New York City.
Jillian has some headlines for us. Hi.
That's right. Good morning to you. Let's start up with this. A Coast Guard lieutenant accused of plotting a mass domestic terror attack is due in court today. Prosecutors say Christopher Paul Hassan had a hit list of possible targets, including Democratic leaders and journalists. He also wanted to kill every last person on Earth. The self-proclaimed white nationalist stockpiling 15 firearms with more than 1,000 rounds of ammo in his basement in Maryland. Pope Francis is hosting a summit at the Vatican to address sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Starting today, church leaders from around the world are meeting with high-ranking Vatican officials to focus on ways to move forward. The 4-day summit will address transparency, the responsibilities of bishops, and holding church leaders accountable. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will make his first public appearance today since word got out that he's stepping down. Rosenstein is scheduled to speak at his alma mater, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He's expected to leave his post at the DOJ by mid-March. And everyone holding their breath after the nation's best basketball prospect's shoe blows out. Look at that, less than a minute into a game. Zion Williamson's foot tearing right through his Nike sneaker as he dribbled away from a UNC player. In a statement, Nike says, quote, "While this is an isolated occurrence, we are working to identify the issue." The Tar Heels beat top-ranked Duke 88-72. Williamson has a minor knee sprain. He's expected to be the number 1 NBA draft pick.
Yeah, they say Knicks fans were worried because the Knicks have the worst team in basketball, and theoretically they'd have more ping pong balls, and they look at him as their rookie.
It's a sprain, though. I mean, sprains can sometimes be worse than breaks. While you fix that.
Okay. Hey, Ainsley, take over the basketball team.
Pat Williams said you could hear the crowd go when they realized
President Obama was at the game.
Good player.
All right, Jillian, thank you very much. Remember that Vermont college land deal scandal involving Bernie Sanders' wife? Well, our next guest asked the feds to look into it years ago, why he says it could come back to haunt Bernie's 2020 campaign.
Plus, one police department is getting pumped up, and they brought in a four-legged friend to help out. How cute is that?
The dog is awesome.
Rising up, back on the street.
Bernie Sanders entered the 2020 field this past week, but past troubles may come back to haunt him. Like, for example, his wife Jane's tenure as president of Burlington. Here with more is Vermont lawyer and Republican Vice Chair Brady Tensing, joins us today from D.C. Brady, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so the college closed with a crushing weight of debt because she bought, in part, 32 acres to expand the college. Took out $6.7 million in tax-exempt loans. What's your problem with that? It sounds like she was just trying to grow things bigger.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I like bigger things, and I like successful businesses, and I understand there's risk. But there's also something called bank fraud. And what happened was that Jane Sanders misrepresented, lied about confirmed contributions to the school in order to get the bank loan to buy this property.
How did she lie?
Well, she overstated the contributions. And we know this because we know this for at least 3 reasons. One, the school is only able to collect about 25% of the claimed contributions. Number 2, the school's own audit report showed the fraud. And number 3, donors came forward to say that their pledges were overstated, that they were misrepresented.
Now, as I understand it, a couple of years ago, you actually you sent a letter to the feds and said, hey, you got to look into this. What happened with that?
Well, we don't know officially what happened with that because the federal officials don't discuss investigations and they don't discuss closing investigations. But Bernie Sanders' office
has claimed that it was closed without prosecution. And this is the shame of this, Steve. If that is exactly what happened, there's not going to be a special prosecutor's report that comes out and explains exactly what role Senator Sanders played in getting this loan or what evidence was in front of the prosecutors that they declined to go forward on. We just have Senator Sanders, who refused to answer questions during the investigation because the investigation was going on, and now he refuses to answer questions because it's closed.
Okay. We got a statement from Jeff Weaver, senior advisor to Bernie Sanders in 2020. These false allegations began with a politically motivated complaint by Trump's 2016 Vermont chairman. As Jane has said from the beginning, she has done nothing wrong and was pleased that the investigation came to an end months ago. It's no coincidence that after Bernie Sanders' record-breaking fundraising during the first day of his campaign, Fox News is regurgitating false attacks from Trump's cronies. The worry was that ultimately they just got a sweetheart deal because she was Bernie's wife, right?
Well, there's not only the worry, there's evidence. If she'd been Jane Doe instead of Jane Sanders, she never would have gotten this loan. It never would have survived the most basic of underwriting. The subsequent president, who was tasked with trying to clean up Jane's mess and trying to save the college, herself said that it appears as though the senator, that the school received special treatment, Jane received special treatment because of Senator Sanders' power in the state.
Okay. Nonetheless, the feds did not prosecute, and we don't know exactly why, but Brady, thank you very much for joining us from D.C. and telling us the story.
Thank you.
All right. 7:20 now here in New York City. Some Catholic foster care centers are being targeted over their faith. One leader who fought back and won is going to join us live. Coming up next, New York City. Time now for your news by the numbers. First number is 7. That's how many groups Education Secretary Betsy DeVos just donated a portion of her salary to. One recipient is the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which benefits historically black colleges and universities. It's unclear how much she has donated in all. Meanwhile, $15.5 million. That's how much the Republican National Committee raised just last month. Campaign finance documents show the RNC has nearly $29 million as it prepares for 2020. And finally, $399,000. That's the fine California must pay after trying to force pro-life centers to promote abortion. The Supreme Court struck down the law requiring clinics to post signs about those abortions. All right, some of the news, Brian.
All right, Steve. Faith-based foster care providers fighting for religious freedom after a new federal law waiver allows them to keep working with couples who stick to traditional Christian beliefs.
Left-wing groups are outraged. The Center for American Progress arguing this weaponizes our nation's right to religious freedom in order to justify discrimination in the foster care system, depriving children of welcoming homes. Reed Lehman is CEO of Miracle Hill Ministries, and he joins us now from South Carolina to react. Good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Tell us about your ministry and your program, please.
Miracle Hill is organized around a mission that homeless children and adults receive food, shelter, and compassion while hearing the good news of Jesus Christ and moving to healthy relationships and stability. We provide more shelter for homeless adults than anybody else in the state. We have the largest level 1 foster program in the state. We provide addiction recovery. We have thrift stores. And we work cooperatively with the people around us to be sure that the network for care of the homeless is as robust as possible.
So why did you want a waiver to allow you to continue your program in the tradition of the Christian tradition? What was happening?
I'm sort of offended by the term waiver. We wanted clarification that the religious rights of religious providers would be protected as they always have been. We've been providing this care for more than 30 years, and we've always had the opportunity to work with our faith community, which is centered around our love for Jesus Christ.
And what did the ACLU, what did they have a problem with?
I don't know which groups specifically, many groups seem to have a problem with it, but they're saying that we restrict the ability, the choices available to care for children, and nothing could be further from the truth. South Carolina is 1,000 families short. We want as many people as possible caring for foster children as we can get, and we're providing 225 families today to do that.
And you just don't want same-sex couples helping you out.
We want to be able to work with people who share our faith. We received nothing for recruiting families, which cost us about $2,000 apiece. We received partial reimbursement for the care of the children once DSS places them in those families. But we're simply saying, let us work with people of our faith, and there are 8 other agencies here in the upstate that other people who don't share our faith can partner with.
Okay, well, for folks at home that agree with you and that are watching, how can they help?
Well, it's been a costly fight. It's cost us, there have been lies told about us. It's cost us support. They can send some. But more than that, for those who share our faith, we'd ask you to pray. Right. For those who have some influence, just encourage your senators and congressmen to continue protecting the rights of religious providers across the country. And we're grateful that the...
Right. And just let me just tell you, the other side is this. Leslie Cooper, the deputy director of the ACLU LGBT and HIV project, says it's a terrible decision that will hurt the children. These children welfare programs were created to help while incentivizing other states to follow South Carolina's bad example. So obviously a detractor, not happy with the waiver.
Well, I appreciate that the Coalition for Jewish Values, the national organization, stands with us. The Catholic Diocese stands with us. I grieve over the loss of the 120 families in Philadelphia because they simply want to follow their faith.
Okay, Reed Lehman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, 31 minutes to the top of the hour. Jussie Smollett turning himself into Chicago police just a short time ago, hours after police named him an official suspect in the alleged hate crime against himself. Michelle Malkin will react to this breaking news.
Plus, Kamala Harris joked about smoking pot, but guess who isn't laughing? Her own father. We'll tell you what he said.
All right, we're back with the Fox News Alert. Empire actor Jussie Smollett is now in police custody as of this morning. He reportedly turned himself in at 5:15 a.m. Chicago time after making a statement to police.
His arrest comes hours after he was named an official suspect in the alleged hate crime attack against himself. Smollett is charged with making false statements to police, and if he's convicted, he could face 3 years behind bars, if not more, actually, if they prove to be a federal crime.
Right, exactly. That's the question. Is the feds apparently are looking into the fact that the threatening letter was sent through the mail. Meanwhile, a police news conference is expected to reveal more details. 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll probably hear what was in the statement that he made. The actor will then head to court this afternoon at 1:30 for a bond hearing. Let's bring in Michelle Malkin, syndicated columnist and author. She joins us today from out in Colorado Springs. Michelle, a lot has been said about this case and the rush to judgment because so many people came out and were so supportive of him when he first told the story, which, as we now know, was not true.
Right, it wasn't true. And in my experience of reporting on hate crime hoaxes over the last 20 years, when you see one social justice huckster, you've seen them all. And I, very early on, called attention to some of the troubling contradictions, lapses, and complete nonsensical claims that were made 3 weeks ago. So I'm glad that all of the Johnny-come-latelys are finally now debunking this, because it was clear from day one when this story, quote-unquote, first broke in TMZ, that it was a publicity stunt. And none of the claims that were filtered through TMZ initially made any sense. The idea that there were people in this liberal elite enclave in Chicago shouting at Jussie Smollett at 2 o'clock in the morning when it was below freezing as he was supposedly strolling around getting a sandwich didn't make sense. All of these questions were already swirling in the local media on January 29th, and it took this long for people to realize that the whole thing was a scam. Why is that? Because people were afraid. They've been intimidated for so long into asking these common sense questions
Not the
because
Chicago
of
cops.
identity politics.
Not the Chicago cops. They got to the bottom of it. They were relentless in doing it, and I'm sure other cases were starved because of it. Now, a lot of candidates quickly ran to the defense and expressed their outrage. Hey, even the president did. But Adam, we should call Adam Schiff, actually tweeted immediately saying this: I met Jussie Smollett at a pride parade in Los Angeles and have seen the passion and moral clarity of his activism firsthand. This week he was the victim of a horrific attack. We pray for your speedy recovery, Jussie, and reject this act of hatred and bigotry. He has deleted that since.
Yes, a lot of people have. And of course, now people like Kamala Harris have been struck with sudden death syndrome. Ask her about the tweet that she wrote. Can't hear you. La, 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 can't hear you. And a lot of this, of course, falls on the media as well, which stoked the hysteria about it and is in large part responsible for this culture of just knee-jerk witch hunts. My question is, who's going to be accountable here? At least with the rush to judgment on Covington, we now have lawsuits. But where's the recourse for all of the Trump supporters, of course, who've been smeared by this? Because now you've got Jussie Smollett's lawyers saying, oh, well, we need a presumption of innocence. Where's the presumption of innocence for people who support the president?
You mentioned Kamala Harris. Do you remember this when she was interviewed on that radio show called The Breakfast Club? Watch this.
They say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
You ever smoked?
I have.
Okay.
And I inhaled. I did inhale.
Well, one Jamaican had a big problem with that, how she stereotyped the fact that she's from Jamaica. Of course I've smoked pot. And it's her dad. His name's Donald Harris. He's an economics professor at Stanford University. He said, my dear departed grandmothers, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of a pot-smoking joy seeker and in the pursuit of identity politics. What's your reaction?
Amen. I'd like to write in Donald Harris instead of Kamala. I mean, the pathetic pandering is so cringeworthy from Kamala Harris that even her phone father is throwing her under the bus after she threw her family under the bus. This is a serious issue, and I have written about my own, I guess, somewhat unorthodox views about medical marijuana in particular, and my own family's positive experience with it. It certainly doesn't help the cause of people who are trying to, argue on behalf of things like that, to have somebody so flippant. And you've got time traveler Kamala Harris, of course, who smoked pot while she was listening to music that hadn't even been made yet.
Right, and she's like a ninth grader. She's a ninth grader trying to be one of the cool kids from the people that brought you Get Me a Beer, Elizabeth Warren. If there's one thing to learn from President Trump and even Bernie Sanders, be yourself, and then we'll decide if you're the right person for the job. She's pretending to be somebody she's not. Michelle, thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you, Michelle.
You bet. Take care, guys.
By the way, we should point out the campaign has had no comment yet on what her father said.
Well,
but I bet that's coming today.
They will. They'll have to.
All right, it is 21 minutes before the top of the hour, and Jillian joins us.
Good morning. Let's get you caught up on this story. The attorney representing the Covington Catholic student who is suing the Washington Post says the lawsuit is not just about money. Lynn Wood says Nicholas Sandmann's image is tarnished.
Think about what this young boy is having to deal with at age 16 when the entire world saw him the way the media portrayed him, as literally the face of evil. It is inexcusable, reprehensible conduct by the media. And the Washington Post led the way.
Sandmann's $250 million lawsuit claims the Post published a series of false and defamatory stories because he was wearing a MAGA hat. Sex education may soon become mandatory in some public schools. A Washington state Democrat is pushing a new bill that would require schools to provide the curriculum to students. Supporters claim it is essential to health, relationships, and life goals, but critics say it should not be funded by taxpayer dollars and may be too graphic for children. Sex ed is currently optional in Washington. This police canine is pumped up about fitness. Watch this. The dog doing push-ups with officers at his New Hampshire Police Department. The Auburn Police now challenging other departments to see if they can do any better. You know, you see that angle of the video because for a second I was wondering, I'm like, does someone have a treat up here? And they're like going like, you know, up, down.
Somebody's got a treat. The dog is looking at somebody.
I know.
He just wants to participate.
Maybe the cops have a treat too.
I would want a treat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you see the guy behind the counter? He's like typing and he's still going up and down.
It's cute. I love it.
Very good. Thank
It's
you
like
very much.
Soul Cycle. Have you ever taken one of those classes?
Nope. All right.
You did. You moved.
No soul.
20 minutes before the top of the hour, and Janice is outside.
What's
Nice
a soul
day.
cycle?
Yeah.
Hi, guys! Look at this crowd today. Amazing. You're from Florida. You know it's going to be like 86 in Orlando today.
Yes, and
Why
I'm
are
going
you here?
for work.
Okay. What, you're going to be excited?
Yes.
Just to go home?
Yeah.
Can I come?
Yes, you can.
Excellent. Let's take a look at the maps real quick, and I will show you the discrepancy between what's happening in Tampa and 34 here in New York and across the northern plains. It's still 8 in Minneapolis. So it's still cold. That's where we have the potential for snow heading into the next couple of days. The flash flood potential for the southeast over the next few days as well. We're going to see flash flooding. And can you believe we had snow in Las Vegas yesterday, my friends? We have snow in parts of Arizona and Utah and Nevada and Colorado. So that's going to be another big story. Severe weather as well for the southeast. Wave my enthusiastic bunch of friends. Woo! Thank you for coming to Fox and Friends.
It's going to be 52 degrees today. You believe this?
I know it's going to melt that snow that fell yesterday. All right. Thank you, Janice. Meanwhile, that American ISIS bride went to Syria to help the terror group kill Americans. But now she says, I'm sorry I made some mistakes. I want to come home. But our next guest says if she does come back, she should be tried for treason. All right, a brand new wave of immigrants arriving at our southern border with Mexico, ready to cross the United States. They are now camped out near the same border wall that potential 2020 candidate Beto O'Rourke would like to take down.
And Griff Jenkins is live on the ground in Mexico with the caravan as those migrants are preparing to start their day. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Ainsley and Steve. That's right, 1,000+ caravan crossing in Mexico's southern border yet again, as in cities like Juarez, you have the shelters just maxing out. The one behind me and one across town, the same scene we've seen, people crammed in there. We talked to one of the migrants, Randy Davidson, about the suggestion by Democrat hopefuls like Beto O'Rourke to take down a wall. Here's what he had to say.
When you hear the Democrat candidates say, take the wall down, there should not be a wall, how do you feel about that?
Very comfortable. I guess if you ask many people here what they feel about that, they're going to say, that's like very comfortable.
Take the wall down?
Take the wall down.
A group of House Democrats with the Homeland Security Committee are making a Codell, guys, down to El Paso across the border from me. A little bit of what they're going to see is a 478% increase of apprehensions in the El Paso sector in fiscal year 19. This all comes as Secretary Nielsen, DHS Secretary Nielsen, made a trip yesterday to El Salvador to try and get those countries to come to an agreement to stop the flow of immigrants. Ainsley, Steve?
All right, Griff, thank you very much.
All right, let's hand it over to Brian for an interview.
All right. Hey, the Trump administration is refusing to allow a woman, an Alabama woman, who left the U.S. to join ISIS back into the United States. She had 3 husbands, and now she has 1 kid. Hoda Mutana traveled to Syria and married an ISIS fighter 4 years ago. Now she says she wants to come home. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says she's not a U.S. citizen, has no legal basis to return. Her family, of course, pushing back on this. Former Assistant Secretary of State to Colin Powell and attorney Robert Charles joins us now. Robert, for those who leave, whether they're citizens or not, they can't come back, can they?
No, I mean, I think what Mike Pompeo is exactly right here. What you're witnessing is the operational definition of the renunciation or the renouncing of their citizenship. And in our, we have federal statutes. We have the Constitution itself, which defines treason very clearly. In fact, even Alabama has laws that define treason, and she fits directly into that. So the bottom line is that what she did was what they call levying war against the state, or or joining a foreign force to fight the United States. And so she's renounced her citizenship claim. You know, the other thing I'll just note is that your last two stories, this story and the preceding one, are in some ways related. And they're related because it is very important that we assimilate immigrants into this country. And what happened is she was kind of part of an enclave that was radicalizing people, was sort of untouched by those around her, and eventually ended up over there. Got caught. You can't say, oops, I got caught. And then come back. Right. But the reality is we need to assimilate our immigrants, which is why the president is right in slowing down the flow of immigrants so that they can be taught American history, language, culture, and that civic duties attached to civil rights.
Yeah, I got a huge problem with the lack of history in our schools to begin with, and the way we're redoing the textbooks. But people would push back and say, hey, wait a second. Didn't New York City have Little Italy, and they have, Brazil? Mini Brazil is just across the street here. What's the difference between the way we used to do it and we do it now?
Excellent question. And the bottom line here is that it is important for people to have their cultural identity associated. If you have a long family history in one way or another, I mean, my family got here in the 1640s, but the reality is if you have an Italian, Irish, or Arab history, and the cultural piece of it is fine. You also have to subscribe to the American Bill of Rights. You have to understand the obligations of a citizen. You have to speak the language. You have to understand the history of America. Right. And we've always done that. Believe it or not, whether you were, up until recently, we've been very careful as a community, as a nation, to reach out and to help assimilate people. So that's an important obligation that we all have, to try to bring people into the fold.
And you link stories, I'll link one. It's really about the illegal immigration story. Are people coming here legally the right way? We've never been anti-immigrant. We never will be.
That's right.
But are you coming here the right way, and do you want to be an American? We have to have a process.
Bingo.
All right, that's a good comeback. And they would tell me to rap, as if they were trying to tell you to rap too.
Yes,
all right,
sir.
Robert Charles, thank you so much. Very disciplined man. All right, straight ahead. Many 2020 Democrats have some socialist ideas on their agenda, but which candidate is the most socialist of them all? It's going to be an interesting competition. Our socialism scale is coming your direction. And forget history or economics, one college offering a class on unsettling whiteness. The most bizarre courses of the year and what it takes to get an A.
Every year, Young America's Foundation compiles a list of the most outrageous courses offered at colleges all across the country, calling out the bias and sometimes very bizarre culture at higher education in America. Joining us now with a few of the more memorable classes from this year's report, Young Americans Foundation spokesman and recent college graduate, Spencer Brown. Hey, Spencer, thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here.
So y'all found 250 bizarre courses at 50 different schools. Which schools did you analyze?
So this report goes through basically the top universities and colleges in America. So the Big Ten, the SEC, the Ivy Leagues, the top 10 U.S. News and World Report ranked colleges, and looks at what these students are actually being taught. And what we find every single year is it just continues this leftward slant and just gets more crazy and more tragic, as the title implies.
Some of these are a little bizarre. At the University of Illinois, you can take a class called Gender in Gaming. It examines the history of gender in video games, internet bullying, doxing, trolling, an effort to consolidate and maintain video games and geek culture as a domain of masculinity and whiteness.
Yeah, so what we see kind of throughout these courses, but this is a key example of it, is just the scapegoating of white males. We see that from the left all over the place, whether it be in pop culture, but especially on college campuses. And so what you see here is them just blaming white men for an apparent lack of representation they feel exists in geek culture for women. And so it really just goes to show, again, white males are the most disfavored group on college campuses.
At the University of Minnesota, you can take a class called Marx for Today. It provides students with an introduction to Marxist theory with particular attention to its relevance for the contemporary world.
You have this course where these are professors teaching the rising generation that somehow Marx's ideology has room in today's society, and obviously that's not the case. If anybody knows anything about Marxism, they realize that the end goal is socialism, and if you want to see how relevant that is today, just look at Venezuela. Clearly that's not where we want to be going, but at many universities that seems to be the slant that professors are leading students toward.
Northwestern University, the course is called Unsettling Whiteness. What are your thoughts?
Well, so that's one. A lot of these courses, when we're going through and surveying them, you don't even really know what the point of the course is, because in this case, is it saying that whiteness itself is unsettling, or is it saying that we need to unsettle whiteness as an institution? And again, it's just this anti-white bias that we see on college campuses all over the place.
And at Middleburg College, you can take American Misogyny.
This is, I think, a really good indicator for the double standard that exists in higher education, because if you look at what they go through, they talk about politics, they talk about the age of Trump, somehow implying, that under President Trump, misogyny has had this massive resurgence. But if you look at the left, they're the real misogynists. You know, how many conservative women were said that the only reason they supported the president was because their husbands made them? And I'm willing to bet that's not covered in that class.
Yeah, and these courses are not cheap. They're expensive.
And what do they get? They don't get a degree.
To learn about video games.
Right. They don't actually learn anything like how to manage your finances, how to get and land a job. Recent report shows that almost 40% of American millennials are underemployed. And that's probably because they're getting classes in, unsettling whiteness rather than how to start a business.
All right, Spencer, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Andrew McCabe's been on a media blitz all week, slamming President Trump, and now one senator is demanding answers from him, and you're going to hear from that senator coming up next. Plus, it is a video that will melt your heart, a soldier surprising his wife and his newborn twins in the hospital. The whole family joins us live in the next hour.
Every down the road is a trip down memory lane.